Oh, fourth. We are up to the Gemara on the Vav Amud Aleph. We just had seen the Mishnah. The Mishnah had really two parts to it. First part was about Edom Zaymim. We said if you have the pasuk says Al Pishnayim Edom by Shloish Edom. So he said a bunch of dinim that show that it doesn't make a difference. Edom or Edom doesn't make if it's 2 or 3 or 100. So we said a din that if you just like 2 Edom, 3 Edom could be mazim 2 Edom. You could have 2 Edom be mazim 3 Edom. Or you could even have 2 Edom be mazim 100 Edom. If they're all part of the same group and they say we saw them someplace else, they're all considered to be the same. And he also said that then all of them have to be mazim the entire group. Let's say there's 100 Edom in the group, and there's Edom Zaymim, you have Edom Zaymim that say that these are 99 of them with us in another place. If there's one that wasn't, then they're not going to be considered Edom Zaymim. They're not going to all get Misa. And then finally, Rabbi Kiva's din that even if you have 3 Edom, even if you have 100 Edom, excuse me, you're not that it's coming to say that even though you only needed 2 Edom and the other 98 are extra, they're still going to get the din of Misa if they're found to be Edom Zaymim. You don't say that they're extra, they're unnecessary, so why are you killing them? No, they all get the same din. That was the first group of din. Then the Mishnah in the second part was talking about the din of Nimsa Echad Mehen Karav Pasal. We switched over from Edom Zaymim and the general din of Eid is to talk about the din of what if you find one of them to be a Karav Pasal, one of them to be a not kosher Eid. So we say it ruins the entire Eid, right? From the pasuk of Al Pishnayim Edom Shloish Edom, that they're all considered to be part of the same Edus. So if the one is Karav Pasal, it passes. And from Edom we learned even 100. Now then we had a two-way machlekes between Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi. That Rabbi Yosi says that's only by dini nefashos. But by dini mamanis, even if one of them is found to be a karavai pasal, doesn't ruin the edus, right? If they're arguing about $100, you don't say you have 100 edim and one of them is a karavai pasal, that it passes. Now, as we're going to see in the Gemara, even Rabbi Yosi agrees that they have to be in some way unified as a group of edim. It doesn't mean that they're just people who happen to be there. And Rebbe says it's not just dina nefashos; it's even dina mamnis. Number one, and a sec that he argues on Rabbi Yosi about that. Rabbi Yosi said it's only dina nefashos. And secondly, Rebbe says that the Edom themselves have to give hasra, and that's going to be that's one of the ways in which they can make themselves into a single group of Edom, is if they gave hasra together. But if they didn't give the asra, it's not going to passel them. And he says, because if that wasn't the case, what are you going to do if there are 2 brothers who see someone kill someone? And you're going to say that the guy gets off scot-free because you have one of them is the two of the Edom are craving to each other. So he says the eitzah is one of the brothers gives asra, the other one doesn't, and that will make it that they're not part of the same group. Zok the Gemara. Amar Rabba. The first thing that we said in the Mishnah, that if you have even 100, they're all considered to be part of the same Edus, and it'll be enough kamina that even if you have to have all of them be huzam in order for them to be hazimim, and that 2 can be machdesh 100, that has to be, in order for them to be all the same 100, they have to be made b'toich kadei dibra of one another. It means within, while one is talking, they're all in the same phrase. They're all speaking one speaks right after the other. What is it considered to be Tarkadei Diba? What's the shear for it? Kadei She'elis Talmud Rav, Talmud L'Rav. When a Rav says, Shalom Aleichem Rebbe Umayri, that's Tarkadei Diba. More than a pause, more than that is not Tarkadei Diba. So Meir Tuba have. So how could you ever have 100 that's always in Tarkadei Diba of each other, right? Kadei Shalom Aleichem Rebbe Umayri is not enough time for 100 people to say testimony. How could you have them be all Tarkadei Diba? You're probably thinking of the answer of the Gemara. Amalei kol chad v'chad b'tarkadei diba sheraver. It doesn't mean they're all within one time. It means that one sentence says, and then the next one talks within tarkadei diba of the next one, of the last one, and so on and so forth. It's a chain. As long as each one speaks within tarkadei diba of the previous one, it's all considered to be tarkadei diba. Doesn't mean they all have to speak simultaneously. So we said in the first part of the Mishnah, Rabbi Kiva said it's not, when we say, the Torah says, it's not going to be Mako to say that even two, if you have three, if one of them is going to be part, that two can be Makkos three, it's coming to be Machna. To say that the extra one is going to get the same din as the original two that were needed for the testimony. And then we continued, and we said, and then we brought the Machlekes Rabbi Yosi and Rebbe. If we're saying that Nimsa Echem Karav Apostle is going to be Edusam Betela, if one of the part of this group of Edom is someone who's possible to say Edus, so why don't we say that every time someone gets killed, the person who got killed, he saw the guy approaching with a knife, he's an aid. Now, I'm not sure how, we say he was an aid at the time, even though he certainly would want to testify. He happens to be dead, so he's not able to. But he witnessed what happened, so why won't we say that he's going to be, it's like a terrible irony, right? He's going to save his murderer from getting killed. He's going to say the person who killed him was an aid, and he's an apostle, he's a Adam Karvetz Alatzmai. He's certainly related to someone who's one of the parties here, so he should save the person who did it from being killed. And that we can answer. We're talking about where he stabbed him in the back. He never saw who killed him. Nearby Yatzel. What about when someone is Reveah, when someone is Ba on someone, Mishkav Zachar, so he gets killed? So why don't we say that the person he was Reveah, that person is going to be the aid that's a Karv apostle and will invalidate the testimony of whatever Edom there are, the kosher Edom. That also could be where he never saw who was Reveah. But the Gemara asks, I'll ask you even a better question. Let the person who killed the murderer and the person who committed this crime, the one who was Reveah, the one who was Ivra Mishkav Zachar, let them save themselves. Say, we witnessed it. We're happy to join the group of Edom, and thereby make it that we're going to get off free. The murderer will say, I'm an aid, and I'm a puzzle aid, I'm a Karav to myself, so I should passel the Aedis. It looks like your mind is having a hard time wrapping around this.
Yeah, what did they curve last week? I mean, they're testifying against him.
Yeah.
So he's Moed B'Davar?
He's saying, I'm happy to say what I saw. And he'll say, yeah, okay, even if he's Moed B'Davar, he's not going to get killed. You can't get killed on your own.
Right, so the Edom are meaningless in that
case. He's going to make the Edom meaningless.
Right.
They say the Edom are not going to be able to testify because they have amongst them someone who's a Karav apostle. And like we said in the Mishnah, Nimsa Achman Karav apostle, they do some Batela. So you don't have any Edom, so he won't get killed.
So but that's only if he precedes them. If they precede him, then he's out of luck.
No, because he'll say, I'm willing to testify. I'm part of the group.
Even after they say, well, he's the perpetrator?
Yeah.
So he can always get out, in other words.
Right,
The perpetrator can always get out.
That's the Gemara's kasha. It's a kasha. We're not saying this should be the din. We're saying if this was the case, that Nimsa Echel and Karve Pasal do some betela, why can't everyone get out of getting killed?
It's just the Hamoed. Yes.
Yeah. Kiasal Kamederava, Ishtik. He was quiet. Abai didn't have a teretz. Kiasal Kamederava, Amalei Yakum Davar, but Mekame Davar Akasa Medavar. He says, this din that we say, if one of them is Nimsa Echel and Karve Pasal, that excludes the people who are the parties to the crime, meaning both the perpetrator as well as the victim. It's only Mekayme Davar. It's talking about those who are witnesses, who are purely witnesses. But someone who is a participant is not included in this pasuk. So he says this whole idea that the person could pater himself, or even that the victim could pater by being an aid. That's not relevant because the Torah he darshed in the pasuk to exclude those who are included, who are involved. So we said the machlokes between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi, that Rabbi Yossi had said that this din that Nimsa Echel and Karve Pasal is only by din in nefashos, and Rabbi said it's both by din in nefashos and din mamonos, but din in nefashos is only where the Edim gave Hasra. That means the Karavai Pasal was Masra. But if the Karavai Pasal didn't give Hasra, he's not considered to be part of the Edis. So because it must be that we prove that it must be that the Edim are only those that gave Hasra, because otherwise what are you going to do? How are you going to ever be Mechayev when there are two brothers that saw someone killed? So what do we say? So now the Gemara is asking. The Gemara did not understand the Mishnah to be saying that it's only according to Rebbe. Sorry. Could you close the windows? Yeah, the windows are closed. So Rebbe says, this is so how do the Gemara understood that there is a way to distinguish between groups that are part of the same edus and those that are not. That means even it doesn't have to be bedavka, like Rebbe said, using hasra as the determining factor of whether they're part of the edus. But rather, there could be other ways of figuring out if they're part of the same thing. So Rava said, this is what you tell them. This is how you make them be part of this. You ask the people, let's say you have two brothers, you ask them, were you just a watcher, an onlooker? You know, like what do they call those people who watch when there's a hatzalah? A looky-look. You're just a guy who's coming to, you're curious. Were you watching because you intended to testify? If they say they were coming to testify, both brothers, Nimsa Echem and Karvai Apostle, do some betelim. If one of them is found to be a apostle, then it's going to be Mavatal. But if they're coming to say just that they're watching, then we're going to say the same svara that the Torah couldn't have meant to passel an edus as long as there's two edim that were present. It must be that they have to, in some way, unified themselves as edus. So if they just said that they're watching, or at least one of them said, I'm watching. One of the two brothers said he's watching, and the other one says, I'm coming to testify. Then the one who was just watching is not considered to be part of the edus. But if it was the other way around, if both of them said that they're there to testify in a chanami, that would pass all the edus. So in the end, it's very interesting because the Mishnah makes it sound like it must be that you have to give a hasra, the Edom have to give a hasra, because otherwise, mayasu shnei achim. Now the Gemara is extending it and saying, even if you don't hold, you have to give Asra. There's other ways of determining whether whether the brother or the Karev is considered to be part of the Eidus. So the Gemara, Itma, Amr Rabbi Yudah Mashmal, Halach Rabbi Yasi, Rav Nachman Amr Halach Karebi. Yeah, they pass in, and Machloek is about what the Psak is. Zok the Mishnah. Hayushnayim roisen roinoisem mechalain zeh. Ushnayim roinoisem mechalain zeh. Ve'echad maser avoy be'emsa. If you have two Adam that are watching, there's a bunch of apartment buildings around the courtyard, and two are watching from one window from one apartment building, and another two are watching from another apartment building. And in the middle is someone who's giving hasra. Bisman shemiksasun royin elu as elu, hare elu edus achas. If the two Adam, in addition to being able to see the murder being committed in the courtyard, they could also see the other window where the other person is standing in, and they wave to each other, and they're all seeing each other being made. So then they're considered to be one part of one Edus with all the nafkaminas, right? That will be that if one of them is nimsa karav apostle, it will apostle. If one of them is found to be huzam, it'll ruin the whole thing. And unless you have all four of them found to be zaymimim, they're not going to get kasha zama, right? If you have a group, you have to have all of them be huzam. Lav, but if not, if they can't see each other, then they're considered to be two entirely separate edis. And what will happen if they're two edis? If one of the two separate pairs of edim is found to be ed zaymim, hu v'hein and eragan. It could be that both the second group of edim will say that the edim that was not found to be zaymim, they can testify about the murder, and in addition, this group of edim was found to be zaymim, they'll get killed. So you could have, right, Reuven and Shimon and Levi see Reuven killing someone in the courtyard. Yisachar and Zvulun are watching from a different window and also seeing Reuven killing someone in the courtyard. And then other Edom come and say about Shimon and Levi, Mano Yisem b'Makom Pliny. So Yisachar and Zvulun's testimony will cause Reuven to be killed. And Shimon and Levi, who also said testimony that Shimon was to be killed, and we listened to them, and we Nigmar Hadin, and they were found to be Zaymim, they'll get killed. Also, Adam Zaymim. The Gemara had brought this before, so it's possible for both their Edus to be actually true, but since they weren't there, they can get killed for saying Edus that was true. I mean, it wasn't true because they didn't see it, but the facts were as they described them. And not only is it true what they said, but the Reuven's getting killed as they had said, but they're still going to get killed themselves. Vashniya P'tura. The second group is going to be Potter. I mean, it's the Mepharshim ask, why does Gemara have to tell you that? Obviously, they no one found them to be Zaymim. Of course, they're Potter. What it means to say is you don't consider them part of the same group, and their edus is still valid. Rabbi Yossi says a rule that no, you have to. You can't have a third party in the middle giving hasra. The edim themselves have to give the hasra. Shenema pishnayim edim yakum davar. It has to be this al pishnayim edim. It has to be from the mouths of the two edim that she gets hasra. Davar acher al pishnayim edim. Another shot that we can learn out from this Alpishnai Medim, that Bezdin has to hear, you've probably heard the rule that Sanhedrin has to know the 70 Lashonos. That's because, according to this shot, the Torah is saying Alpishnai Medim, they have to hear directly from the witnesses, or maybe even from the Bali Dover, and they have to understand themselves. They can't hear it through an interpreter.
Sanhedrin HaGadol had to know it, or every Sanhedrin?
Well, according to this, you have to every Sanhedrin, every time. Every time you have Dinei Nefashos, they have to understand what the Edom are saying themselves.
It's a high bar.
Yeah. There probably weren't so many people who spoke different languages back then. No one traveled anywhere. If you're living in Eretz Yisrael, you think about it, like we think of Eretz Yisrael as like a little tiny country. You could drive across it in a few hours. Back then, it was a trip of a few days to find someone else who spoke a different language. You could just hop on a plane or go in a car.
How would you even learn another language?
Yeah, there was no, what was it called? Was that? There's some company that teaches you. Yeah.
So if there were 108, and each one has to have to give Hasra.
That's a
Well,
good question. Let's see how this. Um, if, yeah. Or I don't know if it has to be all. It has to be maybe from the Edom themselves. I don't know if each aid has to give a separate Asra. But it has to be from the Edom. That Asra came from the Edom, not from an outside party.
no, it's 1/8 to represent the group.
I think so. I think that seems more sensible. Sag mal. Amar V'Zotu Bar Tovia, Amar Rav. Minayin le'edus miyuchedes shei psula. How do we know if you have two separate Edom, right? This is not the case of the Mishnah. The Mishnah we're talking about, there were two groups of Edom in different windows. What if you have two single Edom? One aid in one window and one aid in another window. How do you know that's possible? Shouldn't die on the mouth on the basis of what one aid says. My echad. What does it mean? Aid echad. Eid echad mamish. If it's coming to tell you that a single aid is not enough to put someone to death. The Torah says al pishnayim eidim yakum davar. The Torah says directly you have to have two. So what does it have to say? You shouldn't die. You only die. Someone only can be killed on the basis of two eidim, and then it says, but not on one. We already said you need two. Right? When it says echad, it means it can't be coming as two separate edis. They have to be aware of each other. The two edim have to be together. They can't be seeing individually. We have a brayza that says the same thing. One seeing from one window and another from a different window, and they don't see each other. That they're not considered to be two edim, and they're not going to be able to put the person to death. Even if they're both in the same window, but they don't watch at the same time. First one watches and then the other. But it's also not mitzvah. He says to them, what's this what is this extra thing that you're telling me? If you say they're both watching from separate windows, but they each at least got to see the actual killing. You don't have to tell me a chiddush that if two people watch from the same window, they weren't watching at the same time. Obviously, only one of them could have seen the actual killing because they weren't watching at the same time. So obviously, it's not going to be good. It's not because they're not mitzvah. It's because one of them didn't see the actual ma'aser. It says no, it's not talking about a killing. It's talking about a case of someone who was born isha. So one saw at the beginning of the biyah, the other one saw the next part of the biyah. They both saw the Gili Arayas. That they don't have to see the actual same part of the Gili Arayas. They both say they saw it maybe. So even in that case, even though they both saw from the same vantage point, and they were able to see that the other one was watching, but they didn't see it at the same time, they're not considered to be an edus achas, and they're not going to be able to convict. Amar Rava, Rava says, even though Rabbi Yossi holds that the two Edom, or even the first part of the mission, really, if in order to be unified, they have to both see. We said if the one is watching, two groups are watching from one window, and the other group is watching another window. Someone's giving hasra in the middle. That we said they're not the same. But if they could see the person who's giving the hasra, or the person who's giving the hasra is seeing them, that's enough to start the groups. Rava says that the hasra does not have to be, is obviously not like Rabbi Yossi who said that the Edom have to give the Hasra, but he's saying in the Tanakam who says that it doesn't have to be the same person giving the Hasra as the Edom. It doesn't have to, the Hasra could even be given, the person could give you Master himself. The person, the murderer, could say, I know very well that what I'm doing is going to be Machayev Mimisa, and Afa Pikain, I'm doing it. That's considered Hasra. Vafilu mi Pished, even if it comes from some artificial source. So, for example, if there's a tape recorder, you have a speaker, and it says, "Don't kill," and if you kill, you're going to get killed. And the person, the murderer, acknowledges that he heard it. He's great. He always has to acknowledge. He has to say, "Afal pikain." Even so, I'm going to kill him. So he's going to still be chayiv. Amar Rav Nachman, Edis miyuchedes ksheira b'dinei mamis. Rav Nachman says this that we're saying that you can't have two separate edim being made. That's only, he says that's only by dinei mamis. But by dinei nefasha, I'm sorry, but by dinei mamis, you could have two separate edim that are not aware of each other. We say this pasuk that says "Layamus al piyei echad," which we darshan to say that it's coming to tell you that the two edim have to be aware of each other. That's only a din nefashos, but not a din mamis. Maskef la Rav Zutra alameata b'din nefashos tatzel. If that's the case, we should say that what if you have sometimes two edim could come and save someone from being killed, right? If two edim had come and said that Reuven killed Shimon, and then Levi and Yehuda come and say the edis that Reuven killed Shimon, and then Yisachar and Zvulun come and say that Shimon, that Levi and Yehuda Imanu Yisem, or it's not true, we saw the other way around, so it's edim machishim. But Yisachar and Zvulun weren't together; they were separated. So we should say, if the Gemara is saying, we always are more makel, we always try to find a reason to save someone from being killed, indeed in nefashos. So why are we saying as a rule that indeed in nefashos, we always treat two separate edim as if they're not part of the same group? Sometimes you're going to need that din is going to come out to be a chumrah. You're going to end up killing someone if you don't treat them as a separate edis. Like, for example, they're coming to be mazim, the original edim, and then the nefashos who are trying to kill him. So, why did we say that he and they are both killed? So Gemara kasha. It's taka a good kasha. We shouldn't. It's hard to understand why that should be the rule. So the Gemara, Rabbi Yosi had said that they themselves have to give the asra. Amalei Papal Abaye, Misle Rabbi Yosi Haisvar. Does Rabbi Yosi really hold that the Edom themselves have to give the asra? But Tanan Rabbi Yosi Aimer Hashayna Nereg Nishu Kambud Umusra. He says someone who, if Reuven is known to be a bitter enemy of Shimon, there's no need for hasra. We all know that he's doing it, he doesn't care about the consequences. The reason why, according to this mandama, we're going to see in the end, it's not the same brevesi of our Mishnah. This mandama, the whole reason why you have to give hasra is you have to make sure that the person is doing it intentionally. Maybe he could say, my hand slipped, I didn't mean to shoot, I was just playing with the gun. I was just throwing knives for fun, and then this guy blundered in the way. So that's why you have to have asra. He says, I'm doing it to kill him, but he says if it's its known enemy, then we don't need a asra. We know on our own that he's trying to kill him. So this is not like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says the Edom have to give asra. We're saying over here that it could be you don't need asra at all. Amalei Ahu Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. That's a different Rabbi Yossi. It's not the Rabbi Yossi of our Mishnah. It's Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. The tiny Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. Chaver ein tzarich hasra. Or someone who's a Talmud Chacham doesn't need hasra. He says the whole reason why you have hasra is because a person could say, I didn't know it's asa to kill. I thought I was justified. But someone who's a Talmud Chacham, he knows the halachas. There's no need for hasra on him. He could just say, he has no ability to say I didn't know the rules, since everyone knows he knows halacha. So he You can't say I didn't know, and therefore Hasra is unnecessary. So this Rabbi Yehud is not the same as our Rabbi Yossi, our Mishnah, who says that the Gzeres HaKosav, that the says that not the Rabbi Yossi of our Mishnah, who says that the Edom have to give that Hasra. What are they saying? What are they up to over there? Did they start already? No.
No, the one started.
Yeah, still part of the last minute. Okay. There's the last din of our Mishnah. We said, you learn out from this pasuk a different din that they have to hear, Bezdin, Sanhedrin has to hear directly from the Edom. They can't hear through an interpreter. Hani Lu'uzi, the Asul Kamei Rav. These people from Lu'uz who spoke a different language, they came to Rava. Uki Rava Turgum and Benai. And Rava set up an interpreter. How could Rava do that? Our Mishnah said you're not allowed to set up an interpreter. So how could he have heard Edis from these people? So Rava made the Haviyada Mada Haviyami. Rava was he was semi-fluent. He understood their language. But we didn't know how to speak it. So he set up the interpreter just to convey what he was saying to them, which is not a problem. But the Torah says, Al Pishnaim Edom, Yakum, that Al Pishnaim Edom, you have to hear directly from the Edom. And he was able to hear directly from the Edom. Eloi v'Tuvia crave the Arvahab. These two people, Eloi and Tuvia, were both craving of someone who was a guarantor on a loan. Sarah Papalamema Gabi Loivo Malva Ruchikininu. We're going according to the Mandama who says that you can't be a Karvai Pasul will Pasul. Well, these I'm saying maybe we're talking about over here. These were the only two Edom, right? And Reuven borrowed money from Shimon, and Levi was the Arev, and Yisachar and Zvulun were Kroivim of Levi, and they were the Edom on the loan that Reuven had borrowed money from Shimon. Savara Papalamema Gabi Loivo Malva Ruchikininu. So he said Yisachar and Zvulun are not related to Reuven and Shimon, the main parties of the loan. They're only a curve to the guarantor. So therefore, it's still a good edus. Amalei Rav Huna Breder Vishul Rav Papa. He said that no, it's still not a good edus. It's still going to not be kosher edim, because when Shimon comes to collect from Reuben and Reuben doesn't have any money, he's going to have to go to Levi, who is the guarantor. And since Yisachar and Zvulun are the edim, they're going to be possible edim because they might have to come on to them. So the Mishnah, Misha Nigma Dini Ubarach. Reuben killed someone, and there was a Gemara Din in Bezdin, and Reuben ran away. Bezdin, and then they caught him and they brought him back to Bezdin. Ain't Saisun as Dina. You don't destroy the original Din and have to relitigate it. You just reapply the original Din. As we're going to see, that's not always the case. Whenever Edom come and say that there was a Gemar Din that Reuven was found guilty in a different Bezdin, and this was where the Bezdin was, and this was the Av Bezdin, and these are the Edom, he gets killed based on that say-so. Sanhedrin heges ba'aretz u'b'chutz la'aretz. You can have a Sanhedrin, not the Sanhedrin Agadol, obviously, but the Sanhedrin of 23 that could apply Dinei Nefashos, both in Eretz Yisrael and Chutz la'aretz. Sanhedrin ha'reges echad b'shavua is the famous Mishnah, a Sanhedrin that finds someone to be guilty of capital punishment once in 7 years, nikar chavlanis, considered a hanging court. It's too aggressive. He says once in 70 years. If we would have been part of a Sanhedrin, we would never apply a sentence of death. The Gemara is going to explain how they would avoid it. Gamliel said, by making this announcement, you're getting rid of the whole deterrence factor. Everyone's going to know that they're never going to get killed. They're not going to be so scared of killing. What he's saying is, even if it's true, don't say it publicly. Yeah.
Did they answer him somehow, or were they masking? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see the Gemara doesn't say an answer to it. The ratio of the Mishnah is mashma that if you come back to the same bezdin, then you don't have to relitigate it. But it's mashma. But if you come to a different bezdin, then you do have to relitigate it. Hatani say, "But call Malcolm Shiamdu Shnai V'Yam Meidin on this Pliny Shenigma Din of Bezdin Pliny Edav Areza Nerek." The next part of the Mishnah said that if Adam come and testify that there was a Gemara din and they say what the details were, then you just reapply the original din. And that seems to imply even if it's a different bezdin. Amar Ba'alei Kasha, kam be'eretz Yisrael, kam b'chutz la'aretz. It depends where the original din was and where the second din was. The Tanya. Yehudim den destoy oimer, mishum Reb Shimon ben Shatach. Baruch me'aretz l'chutz la'aretz. If someone went from Eretz Yisrael, he was found guilty in Eretz Yisrael, and he went to chutz la'aretz. Ain't soisun as dinoi. You reapply, and there's Adam that say there was a Gemara din in Eretz Yisrael, and you go to a new din in Chutz La'aretz, you're going to still apply the din of Eretz Yisrael. But Chutz La'aretz Eretz, but if someone was in Chutz La'aretz, he was found guilty in Chutz La'aretz, and then he was captured in Eretz Yisrael, and Adam say that there was a Gemara din in Chutz La'aretz, Saisun is din. They have to relitigate it in Eretz Yisrael. They schus shel Eretz Yisrael, because the schus of Eretz Yisrael, it's more likely that it's possible that in Eretz Yisrael the Bezdin will be able to find the schus to let him off the hook. Bavel is not as it's not as big a bench to place as Eretz Yisrael, and it's this special schus that they'll find a schus and get him off.
So they would adjudicate din in the Fashis schus la'aretz at some point.
Yeah, sure. If they had, that's what we said. You could have Sanhedrin both in Eretz and Chutz La'aretz. You'd have a Bezdin of 23. Now, it only applied when there was a Sanhedrin HaGadol in Yerushalayim. But you could have a Bezdin in Chutz La'aretz that would apply Din in Nefashos.
So Din in Nefashos were Mevata Chutz La'aretz when they were Mevata in Eretz Yisrael.
Right.
So after Bris Hamikdash, second bit, by Sheni was destroyed, there was no more Din in Nefashos.
There's no Lishka Sanhedrin. Yeah. Right. Let's try to finish the parak because it doesn't sound like it's too active in there. Sanhedrin or Heges. We said the Sanhedrin is naig even in Chutz La'aretz. Minani. Where do we see that said the Sanhedrin is naig in Chutz La'aretz? The Tan Rabban. And the end of the pasuk is b'chol Moshe Seichem. The Torah says should be naig for this for all the dairos b'chol Moshe Seichem wherever you are. That tells you that Sanhedrin could be b'chol Moshe Seichem, tells you even in Chutz La'aretz. So what does it mean bisharecha? Torah says within your gates. That often means only in Eretz Yisrael. Over here it means bisharecha ata Moshe batei din and b'chol plach uplach or b'chol ir v'ir. In Eretz Yisrael there's a different din that you have to have a bezdin of 23, not just in every state, every large province or medina, but you also have to have in every city. But in Chutz La'aretz you don't need as many batei dinim, you just need one in every state. But it's not necessary to have in every city. So we said a Sanhedrin that kills. We said that the Sanhedrin that kills once in 7 years is considered a chavlanis. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said once in 70 years. Is he saying once in 70 years is also considered a destructive bezdin? Maybe he was saying no. Maybe he was just saying once every 7 years is chavlanis. But if it's once every 70 years, that's an acceptable amount. That's the proper amount that you avoid the problem that it's going to take away the deterrence factor. The Gemara says it's unclear. Rabbi Tafar, Rabbi Kiva, Imrim, Ilu Hayinu, they said if we would have been there, we would have avoided ever applying a Misa. How would they have done this? Rabbi Yechon, Rabbi Elazar, Dami Travayu, Isim Treifa, Harag, Shalom Harag. They would ask the witnesses, did you see that if the person who was killed, was he a treifa or was he a shalim? If he was a treifa, then there's no misa. If you kill someone who's a treifa means that they have some internal defect that would allow them, that would mean that they were going to die anyway. So in order to know that the person who was killed was a treifa, you'd have to go and examine, do an autopsy, essentially, and take apart the corpse. So the aid himself has to be made that he saw Reuben kill Shimon, and then we took apart Shimon's body and made sure he wasn't a treifa. Amar Ravashi, imtim Sulaim Shalom Hava. If they'll say Taka, oh yeah, so they say that we did the autopsy and we saw he was a Shalom. Makom Sayif Nekav Hava. You could still catch them. You'll say, how do you know that maybe the place where he was stabbed, that's where there was a hole beforehand. So he was a treifa that was, and the tarfus, that problem was obscured by the wound that murdered him. So that's how they would get off a murder. How would they stop someone from getting killed for being for Gilead Rayas? They would ask him, did you see the actual physical Maisabiyah? Which is not very unusual that you could see that. And so Gemara says that that's a good question. Everyone should agree that you can never paskin on someone misa for Gilead Rayas because you never see the actual Maisabiyah, the actual physical hara. So he says, no, it's not necessary to see to that level of detail. When you see, it's evident from their actions that they're being born one another. You don't have to see the actual physical contact. So, yeah, well,
just kind of an observation. I think Rabbi Q